Hey guys, it's Elan, and we're back with another episode. I've been moving, so it's taken a little bit of time. We had about 3 weeks here between my last video and this one, but I'm really excited about this one. I'm going to explain why. When I was a kid, the only way I could learn about martial arts outside of going to a class was through magazines and movies. That was literally it. There was no internet back then. And one of the things that I came across was this secret bone-breaking style from Hawaii called Lua, and I became obsessed with it. Really hard to find information on it back then. Even now with the internet, it's still difficult to find information on it. But it's just something I've always been fascinated with since I'm a little kid. And there's some things about it that are awesome. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right in.
Pow, pow. Inside fighting. Yeah. Dangerous martial arts. Pow, pow. Ooh, ah.
All right, so before we get started, the way to support this channel is to go to InsideFightingStore.com. That's InsideFightingStore.com. There's an awesome instructional on there. I'll tell you what. If you don't like it and you buy it, I'll refund you. If you watch it and you don't like it, that made no sense. But what I'm saying is, if you watch it and you don't feel like you got anything from it, I'll give you back your $25. All right? So go ahead, support the channel, like and subscribe, and comment below. That helps also. If you don't want to buy the instructional, or go check out my store. Okay, so Hawaiian Lua. Let's just jump right in here. So Hawaiian Lua is founded in the 8th century, and it is a martial art that's heavily influenced by the ocean. This is a warrior martial art. So right away, I'm going to cut off any comparisons to modern-day self-defense systems or combat sports. This is a warrior system. It is a warfare system. It's important to note because every time I make a video about one of these things, someone comes out and says, well, can you use it in a ring? Not every martial art is intended to be used in a ring. Okay, some martial arts are historical. Let's just jump right in here, and I'm going to show you some of that right away. So he's showing how to use a weapon. Again, this is not something you would see in a ring. Now, their weapons are incredible, and I'm going to cover that more in detail later, just kind of how they evolved. But this was something that caught me right away. A Lua. Now, why is that interesting? Because Luas are really Maori. They're not Hawaiian Polynesian. And when I started researching this system, I found out that the reason you see Hawaiians doing Lua, doing hakas. If I've been saying Lua this whole time, the word I've been trying to say is haka. So hakas are Maori. Now, the reason you see Hawaiians doing hakas like this is because they were influenced by a Maori battalion that came during World War II. And so that became a part of their culture and their system also. I love how these kind of things bleed over. Now, I want to just cover what some of these movements are. They may look benign to a lot of people, but they're actually all movements that involve grabbing, ripping, hitting, striking, and even using weapons. You see what they're doing right now on their forearms? Well, we're just going to jump right back to me, and I'm going to explain what some of this means, at least from my perspective. Because in Filipino martial arts, Indonesian martial arts, what we would do a lot is stuff that looks like this, okay? If you see it fast, it looks weird. Now, a lot of people ask, why do you hit yourself like that? Are you an idiot? I am an idiot, but that's not why I hit myself like that. The reason we hit ourselves is, number one, for conditioning. On two parts. We're conditioning our forearms and biceps, whatever part of our body we're hitting, but we're also conditioning our smack. That becomes a very heavy-handed smack when you keep drilling it. But more importantly, a hidden reason for this is that we're also learning to counter and strike at the same time, which in my opinion is the most advanced form of striking. If I can parry your punch and hit you at the same time, as opposed to how most martial arts teach beginners, which is, check the hook, counter with your own hook, parry, counter back. No, here we're learning to counter as we strike. It would be like doing this as opposed to this and then turning into the strike. Or instead of this, this. You're learning to hit at the same time as you block, and that's just a great skill. That's advanced striking in any system, whether it's boxing, Muay Thai, Kyokushin, whatever it is. That kind of philosophy of check and hit at the same time is a advanced concept, and you learn it in these kind of systems, Silat, Filipino martial arts, and here obviously in Lua, because they're doing it as part of their drilling, as part of their habit. Now, I want to cover something else here. I'm going to jump right into this one. This one's just brutal. So guys, bear with me. Some of you are going to cringe a little bit here because he's about to grab this guy in a space that no man should be grabbed. But okay, so one of the things that when I learned about this system, or started researching it, especially when I was a kid and I would read in magazine, what they said was the system focuses a lot on grabbing skin and ripping skin, and that they would take people down by their ribs. Here, he's literally taking the guy down by his penis, which is just incredibly awkward. Now, I respect it as a means to end a fight, but it's just a line I'm not willing to cross. You know what I mean? There's just some lines, folks. But what I will do is grab the skin on your ribs and grab your face and grab the skin there. This is something that a lot of martial arts don't address. Now, because this is such a close quarter combat system, if you look from a grappling perspective, when you learn how to grab people's skin, it makes the takedown so much easier. It changes things. You know, you look at judo, you look at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, sambo. Sometimes even just through training, I get caught with someone grabbing my tricep. And what they do is they grab so hard that their nails and their fingers dig into my tricep muscle. And it's much more painful and it takes me down much faster. These guys are doing it intentional. These guys are learning to do this. Look, he's grabbing him right on the rib cage, right on that belly fat area right there on the side, like love handles. That's a great way to take someone down. I'm telling you, I have felt people grab me like that. The only other place I've experienced it was Silat. And let me tell you, it left marks. Like these guys can grab right through you. It's crazy. And so, you know, takedowns are hard to get on a resisting opponent. When you start damaging them in the process of taking them down, it changes the game a little bit. Very hard to spar with this because you definitely will lose sparring partners very, very quick. You're just not going to hold on to sparring partners. Now, on that note, you can watch it one more time. Again, he's just grabbing the ribcage. Thank God he's not grabbing the guy by the gonads again. I just really don't like watching that. But let's just go on to the next video here. So what's nice about this one is if you look, it kind of corresponds to the last video we saw. So they have a very nice flow. What it looks like is that when they hit you in one direction, they counter follow up in the next angle, which is something you see in systems like Kaju Kembo, oddly Hawaiian martial art, Kempo. Those kind of systems have a similar influence here in their empty hand approach. What I do notice here is that they're open-handed a lot here. Now, being open-handed could be for a couple of reasons. It could be because this is a warrior-based system. They don't want to break their hands. They have to be able to hold on to weapons. Another reason could also be, like we just saw, that they grab the skin. And what I've noticed in close quarter combat systems, if you were to ask me how would I fight if I'm fighting someone at range and I wanted to stay at range, I'd keep my fists more closed as I connect. I would use fists. But if I was looking at closing in on them and getting really tight and taking them down, I'd probably use smacks and keep my hands more tactile and relaxed because I could feel you in the process. I could feel how your body's moving. And actually, when I learned Filipino martial arts, I learned it all open-handed strikes at first. That was just how I was taught, and I'm very lucky for that. But there's very few systems that actually teach you how to fight that way. It's an interesting way to become a transitional fighter from striking to takedown when you keep your hands open the entire time. Now, I want to show what I find is a trap of a lot of modern day martial arts that are really historical martial arts. So if we look right here, this is being promoted as Hawaiian Lua. What this looks like to me is kind of like a mix of karate, taekwondo-ish kind of sparring, and then they randomly go into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. This is something I've noticed that's like a trend in almost every system that is a historical traditional system where they're trying to like make it seem like they're an MMA. And have you guys noticed this? Like you go to a karate school and all of a sudden they're like, and we teach MMA, ground fighting, and this and that. I'm like, leave that to the MMA guys. Leave Brazilian jiu-jitsu to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys. It's not really part of your system, and no warrior wants to get caught up in a fight like this. No real situation of warfare. Is this what you want to be doing? And I don't believe this is how ancient Hawaiian warriors trained. And so it's just sad that sometimes people adapt their style so much to appeal to a modern day crowd for marketing purposes that they lose some of the historical elements. And even here in this next, like this really looks like Taekwondo sparring to me, or point kickboxing sparring. This looks just like straight up Brazilian jiu-jitsu or nogi, wrestling, whatever you want to call it. But let's just look over here. This to me starts looking a lot more like Krav Maga. Now, this probably is closer to what old Hawaiian Lua was. And I'm not saying that martial arts shouldn't evolve and change over time. I think that's important too. But I do like seeing the historical aspects of a martial art kept. These motions look identical to what I've seen in Krav Maga, Kaju Kembo, Kempo, even Silat. Like they're all overlapping here. Whereas the real unique elements of the system, like I showed you before, that empty hand approach, that grabbing skin approach, that closing in all the time, is something that, in my opinion, has just as much value, if not more. Let me just pull up this next one here because this guy,
pretty good sized tiger shark.
The guy who talks about the weapons of Lua. And this is my favorite part of the system, if I'm being honest with you. These guys developed because they're an ocean culture. And one of my favorite things to explore is how different cultures develop their martial arts differently based on their environment and their needs. And these guys were living next to the ocean. They would literally use shark teeth and string and wood. That was like their primary basis of almost all their weapons. And they would create the most unique weapons you can think of. These guys were fighting people who had far more superior weaponry in terms of like metals and, you know, swords and things like that. And they still managed to create incredibly effective, brutal tools and find unique ways to use them. I just love it. This is when I talk about martial arts, there's self-defense, there's traditional martial art, and then there's culture and history. And this is just, am I going to walk around with one of these? No, but just seeing the weapon and how you don't see a weapon like this anywhere else in the world. Like they literally just took wood and shark teeth and found innovative ways to create brutal tools out of it. You know, you look at like Okinawan martial arts and you say, oh, it's unique how they developed farming tools into weapons and just all of those different martial arts in history that have developed different weaponry based on what was available to them at the time. This is freaking brutal, man. Imagine getting punched in the face with that. You get this one right here, like a little paddle club with shark teeth on it. There's some really, really cool ones here. This guy's a wealth of knowledge, you know, basic angles. Everything's simplistic, which is, again, when you look at real modern warfare, real ancient warfare systems, a lot of it is simplistic because it had to be. Again, a little club, wooden club with shark teeth on it. There's one that has a great white tooth on it, which is brutal looking. But again, it's just pure innovation based on what's available at the time. And when I do these videos, what I like to see, because, you know, it can get repetitive, is martial arts that are totally different than anything else you'll find. And while I'll admit the empty end here, outside of the skin grabbing and some of those things being unique, is pretty similar to what you see, like I said, in Kajukembo, Silat, Filipino martial arts. This aspect of it, the weapons aspect of it, the ancient cultural aspect of it is one of a kind. Look at that giant tooth over there. I feel like these guys will hit you in the gonads with it. I feel like that's their primary target, like we saw previously. You know, just a bad day at the office. This is very, very interesting. Also, he's talking about how here this comes from the swordfish's bill and how it's super strong, but still flexible. Who would think about that? Creating a weapon from the swordfish's bill. Is that the word bill? Someone correct me down below. And they would just wrap it with string and they create a simulated dagger with it. This is not a simulated dagger. This is a real dagger, but it's just not sharp like what you would see in other cultures of the time. Not as sharp. And then they just go real club heavy. Like this guy just shows after they have wooden daggers, they have clubs. Here he shows how it was similar to what the Spaniards would have, espada y daga, if you've ever done that in Filipino martial arts, sword and dagger. And so they even developed their own ways of fighting and mimicking other cultures just with their own tools. Again, it's just so interesting that all this came from the ocean. And even the movements of the system are said to have been derived from the ocean. The priests took the movements from the life and the creatures of the ocean. So super, super unique right there. Saying the word unique a lot, but that's what it is. I've never seen something like that, but you can definitely damage somebody both with the bottom and the top. It's got a spike on the bottom and it's a club on top. There's a video I'm going to pull up right now.
Hey, welcome to 50.
So I want to show her, Michelle Manu, I believe her name is, and she's a big proponent of Lua. And she's showing here how to use the paddles that they would have as a kind of a warrior tool and weapon. And this, again, just signifies everything we just saw in the previous video, where you can take these classic kind of tools that they were using for ocean-related use and turn it into a viable military weapon. She shows something else right here. And again, their goal is always to get close. So you'll see they always get close, as you can see here, when they're fighting you. See how she's driving in? Probably because they were fighting people who had more sophisticated weaponry. And if you could drive past the sword, then you can nullify it. But here she's talking about this tool right here. And it's just string with a little piece of wood. So benign, so basic. And you would think, like, how is this an effective tool? Well, it turns out that they would whip these things around, and she actually shows herself whipping it around back here. They would whip them around, and they would throw them at invading forces and it would trip them. So it was used just enough. It wasn't actually a tool to hurt you. It was a tool to disable you just temporarily for someone else to come in and then kill you. And what the reason they would do that is because the women became incredibly proficient with these. And then the women would use these from a distance, and then the men would come in and kill the invading forces. Again, these are just different kind of approaches to martial arts. So here's the deal. I'm gonna say the pros and the cons like I always do. It's kind of obvious. This is a historical martial art. I really like the aspects, the flow of movement. I like how they keep their hands open. You know, they grab the skin. My favorite thing here is the unique weapons and how they use them and how they develop them and the culture and the history. I'm going to say this. There are no cons that I can say because I don't see this as a modern day self-defense or combat sports system. Could it help you in modern day self-defense? Sure, there's some movements there that are great, just like there's movements in other systems, but it has a real historical cultural significance, which is far more beautiful. And I'm tired of everyone saying that a martial art has to fit into a specific category for it to have value. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu most of my life, 24 years. And honestly, I get tired of seeing every martial art trying to adopt it and how it's mainstream and how everyone thinks that's the way to make money nowadays. There's incredible value in these cultural systems and their history. And again, if you learn how to use these weapons and you keep it in your house, it's just a weird way to kill somebody if they invade. But I guarantee you, you'll be able to kill somebody with one of those shark teeth, you know, knuckle busters. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Just an introduction to a martial art I found when I was a kid that I thought was super cool. Like and subscribe and comment below. Let me know what you want to see in a future video. You can put anything in there as long as it's related to fighting and martial arts. Thanks, guys.